A year ago, the Hope for Tomorrow Foundation sent a team of nurses and doctors here to the Carlos Medrano Hospital in Juliaca, Peru. Although the Hope for Tomorrow Foundation sends a team of doctors and nurses all over the world, it is the first time that they have returned to a third world country. They have come back because they were only able to service half the people that they saw last year, and the need is very great, so they've come back to finish the job. The Hope for Tomorrow Foundation is about helping children. Each year it sends a humanitarian team of ordinary men and women who come from ordinary circumstances someplace in the world to help those less fortunate than we here in the United States. They are like tens of thousands of health professionals all over the world who want to do something to help their fellow man. Dr. Jeffrey Meilman is a plastic surgeon from Amherst. For almost 2 decades, he has led teams of doctors and nurses from Western New York all over the world to perform humanitarian surgery.
This year was the second year that we returned to Juliaca, Peru. Last year, I think our group had a very good experience in Juliaca, meaning that there was a lot of surgery to be done, a lot of needy kids to be taken care of, and we only got through, I would say, about half of them last year, and I think this year we sort of completed the list, and I think that that was very appropriate.
Dr. Jack Hubsman is an anesthesiologist from Mount St. Mary's Hospital in Lewiston, New York. It is his first trip with the Hope for Tomorrow Foundation. Traveling to Juliaca is a long way from the sterile environment and modern technology of Mount St. Mary's Hospital.
It was a very interesting experience. I ran into a number of challenging situations because of the equipment that these countries have, which is to some extent antiquated and not up to the par that we're used to running in the United States.
Dr. Ken Anthone is an eye surgeon who specializes in cataract surgery. He has traveled all over the world. Recently, he traveled to China to give lectures on a new procedure and a new apparatus he has developed.
The first thing that comes to me is I sort of felt like I was sitting at a playoff game, at a Bills football game in the playoffs, out in the cold, all bundled up. Yet, as cold as you are, there was a sort of excitement running through the air, thinking that we're going to really do something really good here.
Dr. Charles Rice is the Director of Wound Care and Research at Mount St. Mary's Hospital. Here they perform near miracles in treating wounds that are difficult to heal. What he saw in Juliaca left him in awe.
We had an opportunity to go up on the floors of the hospital, and the conditions were deplorable. These people had pressure ulcers. One woman had a severe injury to her forehead from a fall that was over a month old. She had sutures in place. The wound was necrotic. She had exposed bone. And I was fortunate enough to have a doctor at the hospital who was interested, and we were able to help show him how to care for the wound. And one of the companies that has been supplying our wound care products, Smith & Nephew, was instrumental in donating a large number of these products, and I was able to explain to him how to use the products.
The foundation also took along 2 young college students as observers. Gina and Andrew Gage are brother and sister from a medical family. They are both interested in becoming doctors.
Well, growing up with it, you're always in the environment, and I'm definitely interested in it, and just watching the surgeries made me more interested in it to pursue the career.
It's so different from the U.S. It was jaw-dropping, the things I saw. The conditions were so much worse than I expected, and we just take for granted the medical things we have in the U.S. We take it for granted.
The need in Juliaca has not changed. When last here, the doctors saw patients that came from all over northern Peru. In many cases, they walked many miles and tread up mountains to get here. Many of the patients were very young. Most suffered cleft lips and palates. In many cases, both.
We have a 3-month-old male, one of the 20 or so children that we just saw in the clinic, and this child's born with a cleft lip, and we're just about to repair the cleft lip. The kid also has a cleft palate, but that we're not going to address at this time, and that can be done when the child's somewhat older. So we hope to repair the lip and watch the child here for several hours, and the mother will take the child home later this evening.
Last year, Dr. Meilman, head of the humanitarian group, repaired a cleft lip and palate for this young boy, Yuri. He was small for his age. Most of the patients who come to see the humanitarians are very poor. This is how Yuri and his parents, Tomasa and Roberto, live. They live in a one-room shack with no indoor running water and no toilet or kitchen. Because of his ailment, Yuri was small for his age. Obviously, eating and retaining food was a problem. Today, Yuri is healthy and just as energetic as any normal kid. He has doubled in size and, according to his mother, in energy.
He's eating normally. He's making actually all his activities normally, like used to be before. So now another one is, you know, after of this surgery, probably Mr. Meilman make a little mistake. Now he's a devil.
Oh, he's too healthy.
He's too healthy and very active.
This young man, Moises, also came to see the doctors last year. He suffered from terrible burns to his upper body that fused the skin around his neck. He literally could not turn or bend his neck. The Hope for Tomorrow Foundation brought him to Western New York, where Dr. Meilman performed surgery to give him relief. When Moises heard that the humanitarians were returning to Juliaca, he came to the hospital and surprised Dr. Meilman. It was a great reunion.
Yes. Moises! Wow, long time no see. Haven't seen you in a long time. Look at this guy.
On the surface, Juliaca seems like a thriving city. It has a mayor who is very active.
El saber de que médicos de un país tan adelantado, con la medicina tan adelantada, nos visitaran a la ciudad de Juliaca.
To know some important doctors from other countries with advanced technology came to this poor area of Juliaca to help us to our patients.
Como ustedes vieron en esa oportunidad,
that opportunity.
Tenemos mucha niñez, mucha juventud enferma, que no tienen la posibilidad de poder viajar a la capital del Perú o a otros países para tratarse de estos temas. Por eso agradecía de manera muy especial a Dios de que los haya enviado a ustedes como ángeles, que nos curen, que nos ayuden, que protejan nuestra niñez, nuestra juventud.
To Jehovah, to our God, to send us angels, doctors, to our city to cure all those poor kids, all those poor people. So we're very, very glad for that one.
It has shops and banks and stores, and people bustle about. But Juliaca has no business organizations, no Rotary Club. In fact, the nearest Rotary Club is in Puno, 1 hour away by bus. In Puno, a thriving metropolis, they are very aware of the conditions in the mountains of Peru. And in Juliaca, although there is little they can do for Juliaca, they are grateful that outsiders come to help.
Quiero dar la más cordial bienvenida a todo el equipo que se ha hecho presente en esta oportunidad en la ciudad de Juliaca.
To Juliaca, welcome to Puno. Like a president of Rotary Puno, I would like to say thank you very much. Thank you very much also, because that's very important, like Rotarians people, to share different things with all those poor people. We want to tell you also, you're making a wonderful job in all this area, because unfortunately it's one area with very, very poor people. Most of them, they don't have very good conditions to live there. So we are very happy to see you once again working very hard with all those people, with those wonderful donations, with surgeries. You made it all those days, and also tomorrow you're going to donate more staffs to our hospital. Like President of Rotary Puno, we want to say also thank you very much to came here, to this area.
Juliaca is a poor border town. Its primary industry is taxicabs, but its economy survives on the black market. It is winter here. During the day it is warm, but at night it gets cold. Yet almost anywhere you go, you find there is no heat in the buildings, and everyone is wearing parkas. That includes the hospital. It seems that everyone is accustomed to that. They live their lives oblivious to the environmental and economical hardships. The children in this orphanage live and play in conditions that are considerably better than many children who have families. That is the case for Moises. He lives here with his brother and his brother's family. They have even less than Yuri. They have less than the children in the orphanage. There is no running water. They must draw it from a well. They, too, must cook under a lean-to using propane fuel. But since his surgery by Dr. Mailman, Moises sees a brighter future.
He now is much better. He's feeling much better to expose his neck. The other one is he can move very easily now. His neck, he can make all their activities normally like he used to do before.
The Hope for Tomorrow team came back to finish the job it had started last year. This time, Dr. Mailman performed surgery. Anesthesiologist Dr. Hubsman assisted him. For Dr. Hubsman, this was an eye-opening experience and a change.
Up in this remote portion of the country, it is very limited in its capabilities due to a lot of the things that I mentioned. They don't have as much of the modern equipment that we have and the facilities to do many of the things that we think are very common back in the United States. And I think that's one of the reasons the doctors down here aren't able to do some of the things we come down and do. It's not that the physicians haven't been trained, but they don't have the support structure in place to do what they need to do as far as supplies, medications, equipment, things like that. For instance, we bring down a lot of equipment that we're very used to using at home on a single surgery basis. We use it, it gets disposed of, handles things such as sterility and legality of keeping things clean. As we throw it out here, the nurses from this facility come around and pick it up out of the trash, clean it, they'll reuse it many, many times over again. So it's a whole different way of doing things, and it's a matter, I think, of learning how to get what you need done the way you've got it with what you've got, and they're very good at that. So I applaud them in their ingenuity and their ability to make things work, but it certainly is a world of difference away from what we see back in the United States.
Dr. Anthon, the eye surgeon, was very excited because he came with an expensive piece of high-tech equipment.
We're going to be using this new Bausch & Lomb phacoemulsification machine. This is what people commonly call laser surgery, but it's actually a little more sophisticated than that. We're using ultrasonic energy here to break up a cataract and then to suck it out of the eye. And then we're going to replace that cataract, which is the lens of the eye that became cloudy. We're going to replace that cloudy lens with a brand new clear lens so that you'll be able to see again.
As high-tech as the Bausch & Lomb equipment is, trying to use it in this primitive environment proved to be a challenge. The equipment required a compressor. There was none. After an intensive search, the hospital produced a compressor such as they use in an auto shop. It produced so much carbon monoxide that Dr. Anthon suffered carbon monoxide poisoning and had to be treated. He persevered, and finally a suitable compressor was found that could be adapted to the phaco machine, and Dr. Anthon was able to operate. Once he started, he found severe eye problems that we here in the United States rarely see.
They all have the same thing. Everybody I've seen so far today is here for cataract surgery, but some of them have other problems too. They have pterygiums, which are growths of skin right over the eyeball itself. And that alone, if it grows over the part of your eye, that black pupil, that will cause you to go blind. So those people are going to need to have surgery on that as well. We've also seen people who had traumatic injuries to the eye, where they've had damage to the cornea and the sclera and the lens, which turns into a cataract. those people are going to be more difficult to do. We're not going to be able to do them on this mission. Maybe when we come back the next time, we'll be more prepared for a more extensive surgery, but that could be a 5 or 6 hour operation. It involves doing grafting of the sclera, along with corneal transplants and surgery on the cataract, and we don't even know what the retina looks like yet. So that type of patient we can't do. All the rest we're going to be able to do within the next 2 days. Every single patient that comes here, we will be able to operate on and restore some type of vision.
For Dr. Meilman, the problems have not changed, but it is an opportunity to continue the work started last year and to help those who cannot get this type of surgery in this poor country.
The equipment that these people, the physicians, have to work with is really rudimentary, and I didn't see much change in Juliaca from a year ago. I did see that they have some different equipment, but they can't use the equipment. The equipment, some of it doesn't work. They can't adapt the equipment to their electrical outlets, etc. So they're really in dire straits. I know that the Peruvian government is trying to help the situation there, and maybe eventually it will. But at this point, it's not a good situation equipment-wise.
That assessment was confirmed by the U.S. Ambassador to Peru, McKinley.
Health is one of Peru's biggest challenges, health and education. The social indices in Peru are lower than in many other places in Latin America, and this is despite an economic growth rate that is higher than in most other places in Latin America, and a period of 6-7 years in which we've seen a radical change in the economic makeup of this country. But the fact is that the health challenges remain enormous. Malnutrition among children under 5 is very significant. The infant mortality rates are among the highest in Latin America. And the social services, as you've seen in Juliaca, are strained to meet the needs. And it's not simply a question of resources. The government now is throwing more money at health than it ever has before.
While Peru's economy is growing robustly, it has a long way to go. It is a large country with very few roads. It communicates mostly by cell phone, and resources are few. Travel is nearly impossible. A distance that would take us hours to travel may take days here, if at all possible. People here must make do with what they have, and when what they have is not enough, they must call on powers beyond their own ability. That is where their faith comes in. When all else fails, they turn to God.
Y en un segundo momento hay que reconocer que hay muchas personas.
We need to recognize something. There were beside us another groups who they were working, but in different way, more like politicians, because most of these people, they was trying to satisfy their economy things, the other ones, but they didn't work in one important thing, which is the feelings of these people.
The primary mission of the Hope for Tomorrow humanitarians is to help. They bring medical expertise to perform surgeries and teach their skills to the doctors here. But they also bring medical supplies to donate to the hospital. Much of it donated by organizations and people who could not make the trip. People like Ursula and Alex Campanella of Campanella's Orthotics and Prosthetics of Buffalo and Amherst. This equipment, valued at $15,000, is sorely needed and much appreciated. The conditions in Juliaca were difficult. It was winter, and the humanitarians were above 12,000 feet. But the mission ended. And as the humanitarians made their way home, they stopped off in Ecuador near the equator. And what they found was that the mission continued here on the Galapagos Islands. The Galapagos Islands are a living laboratory. They are warm and isolated, leaving nature practically untouched. Here, things evolve in a natural order according to the environment of each island. and yet nothing is native to these islands. All the creatures here come from somewhere else, brought here by the wind or floating on driftwood. That is why the only mammals here are those brought by man. Once the reptiles and birds got here, they were isolated and had to evolve to survive. Man came, and with him came civilization. But he found that he too was isolated, and like the creatures before him, he too had to evolve.
Y pues, por otro lado, nosotros como municipio estamos haciendo todos los esfuerzos para, con los pocos recursos que tenemos, porque la calidad de vida en Galápagos es mucho más cara, hay un valor agregado, tratar de sacar adelante y solucionar los problemas sociales ambientales.
The city is working with for help the population and people living here, because the standard of living here is too high than comparing the mainland. It's probably twice values.
Or three.
Or three.
Y todo radica en que todos los productos que llegan a Galápagos llegan en base a transportación de cabotaje Guayaquil-Galápagos.
All the items and meals that they receive has to come in boats, and everything has an extra value for bringing those here.
Y en ese sentido también el gobierno está comprando un barco de carga con la Marina Mercante para que los productos puedan venderse a los mismos precios de Ecuador en Galápagos.
And the government is trying to buy a big boat just for use for these purposes. Then the prices will be the same mainland and the Galapagos Islands.
Y la parte más importante es que todos quienes vivimos en Galápagos somos privilegiados por vivir en este espacio que es de ustedes, porque este es un patrimonio del mundo.
He believes all the people living here, like Galapagonians, which is colonists, it's such a privilege living here.
There are no surgeons on this island. The best they have is a pediatrics physician. If someone needs a surgical procedure, they must travel by ship to Ecuador, 600 miles away. For the poor inhabitants here, that is almost impossible. This woman's child was born with a cleft lip and cleft palate. What makes her case so compelling is that there are very few children born on these islands with a cleft lip or cleft palate, and there are no doctors who can perform this necessary surgery. Because this is so rare, everyone knows, and here, her child would be considered abnormal. She heard about the medical team coming, and she met Dr. Mileman on the dock with her baby in her arms. He did an examination on the spot.
She's 2 months old. She has a bilateral cleft lip and a cleft palate, and the treatment is to repair the lip at an early age, like around now, 2 to 3 months, and then she has to wait about another year before the palate should be fixed. So Mama, who found us out on the dock here in the Galapagos, will make her decision. She has to decide if she's ready tonight or tomorrow.
By the motto or be good and do good, like charity anywhere is, we hook Hope of Tomorrow for this visit to the islands, for see what we can do in the near future. Then we found this little boy with this problem, the hair lip and this problem in the palate. And that was a miracle, watching the surgeons of Hope of Tomorrow and people around fixing and doing through this miracle in his life.
Because there is no surgeon on this island, and because these men are strangers, there is much apprehension. The doctor agreed to perform the surgery. This created a myriad of problems. The medical team left all of its unused supplies in Juliaca. This child is very young for this type of surgery, and the hospital is poorly equipped for this type of procedure.
Bueno, a mí me parece muy interesante porque nosotros como ministerio aquí
He said it's very interesting receive this kind of people, and they are traveling a lot, and they know this. They don't have a specialist, and they don't have human resources, and all the international support is very welcome.
The doctor conferred with the medical staff. As it turned out, there were medical interns who were working at the hospital, and they were able to find much of the needed equipment and supplies. That evening, the doctors began their surgery.
I'm told that there are about 300 births here a year, so that would make this a very unusual problem in that a cleft would happen no more than once every 3 or 4 years here in the Galapagos. And we just happened to arrive at a time when this child, again, is just 2 months old, and apparently it was well known all over the island that this child did exist because it's such a rare entity to happen.
While the doctors worked, the mother with her family waited nervously for the outcome.
Sí, debe ser algo.
She believes it's unbelievable because they have to make a sacrifice for go to the mainland because it's not a specialist here, and it's really good. She can imagine that it's happening.
Several hours later, the first phase of the surgery was over, and all was well. The next phase of surgery cannot happen for a year. The child will have to be taken to the mainland to have it completed. But for the time being, the child is well, and the family is relieved and happy. So from Juliaca to the Galapagos, the medical team completed its mission. The Hope for Tomorrow Foundation did not skip a beat. Whenever, wherever a request is made, Dr. Meilman and his team of doctors fulfill their mission. They are a hearty bunch with undeterred, strong spirits to help those in need. You may wonder what's changed since last year. Well, the doctors here are using the techniques they learned last year. But this year, they have learned new techniques and gotten materials to support those techniques, and they received a $115,000 phaco machine from Bausch & Lomb, which means that people who were literally going blind will now be able to see. In Juliaca, Peru, for the Hope for Tomorrow Foundation, I'm Stan Coleman.